The night before the rehearsal dinner, my son's fiancée said, "You can come if you promise not to speak." I stayed home instead. By dawn, my son was at my door, still in his tux, crying. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I got here. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from. And subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. To this moment where my only child stands on my doorstep, looking like his world just ended. Because mine ended 24 hours ago. In a restaurant I helped pay for, surrounded by people who smiled at me like I was already dead. My name is Rebecca Norton. I'm 61 years old, a retired high school English teacher from Austin, Texas. I've lived in this same two-bedroom house for 33 years. My husband Thomas died 5 years ago from a heart attack while mowing the lawn on a Saturday morning in July. He was 58. 1 minute he was pushing the mower in neat diagonal lines the way he always did. The next he was on the ground and I was screaming for help that came too late. After Thomas died, Daniel was all I had left, my only child. The baby I carried for 9 months, the toddler who clung to my leg on his first day of kindergarten, the teenager who called me from college at 2 a.m. because he was homesick. I would have done anything for him. And I did. In 2019, Daniel called me from his apartment in downtown Austin. He was 32 years old, working as an architect at a mid-sized firm, and he sounded terrified. "Mom, I need help." His voice cracked on the phone. "I made some bad investments. I owe $180,000 in margin calls and student loans. If I don't pay by next month, I'll lose everything. They'll garnish my wages. I might lose my job." I had $290,000 in the bank. It was the money from selling my parents' house after my mother passed away in 2018. That house in San Antonio had been in our family for 40 years. I could still smell my mother's lavender sachets in the closets, still hear my father's voice calling us to dinner. I had planned to keep that money for retirement, maybe travel a little, visit the places Thomas and I never got to see together. But Daniel was crying on the phone. "My son. My baby. Mom, please. I'll pay you back. I promise. I just need this one time." I drove to the bank that afternoon and wired him $185,000. I kept $105,000 for myself. I told him we'd work out a payment plan later, something manageable, $500 a month, whatever he could afford. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "You saved my life, Mom. I'll never forget this. I love you so much." That was 5 years ago. He never paid back a single dollar. Not $500, not $50, not even $5. Last year, Daniel met Grace Sullivan at some networking event for young professionals. Grace is 33, 4 years younger than Daniel. She's what they call an influencer on Instagram. She posts photos of herself in expensive restaurants, wearing designer clothes, traveling to beach resorts. She has 47,000 followers. I know because I looked her up after Daniel told me he was dating someone. When he first brought her to my house for Sunday dinner, Grace walked in wearing white jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She had long blonde hair, perfect makeup, and she smiled at me with teeth so white they looked like they'd been professionally bleached. "Mrs. Norton, it's so nice to finally meet you. Daniel talks about you all the time." She didn't eat anything I cooked. She said she was gluten-free, dairy-free, and didn't eat red meat. I had made pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans. My mother's recipe, the meal Thomas loved. Grace picked at a small portion of green beans and drank water with lemon. Daniel apologized for her. "She's very health-conscious, Mom. Don't take it personally." But I did take it personally. Because 3 months later, I saw photos on Grace's Instagram of her eating pizza, drinking milkshakes, eating a cheeseburger at some trendy downtown restaurant. She wasn't gluten-free or dairy-free. She just didn't want to eat my food in my house. They got engaged in January 2023. Daniel proposed at some expensive resort in Cabo San Lucas. The ring cost $12,000. I know because he told me, proud as could be. I wanted to ask where he got $12,000 when he still owed me $185,000, but I didn't. I smiled. I hugged him. I said congratulations. Grace's mother is Jessica Sullivan. She's 59, a year younger than me, but she looks like she's spent a fortune trying to look 45. Her face is tight and shiny from Botox. Her lips are plumped with fillers. She owns a small interior design business that, according to Daniel, has been struggling for years. Jessica drives a leased Mercedes she can't afford and lives in a condo she's 3 months behind on, but you'd never know it from the way she acts. Jessica treated me like I was beneath her from the first moment we met. At the engagement party Grace's family hosted at some country club, Jessica introduced me to her friends as Daniel's mother, the retired teacher. She said it the way you'd say, the janitor, or the cashier. Like my 30 years of teaching Shakespeare to teenagers was something quaint and forgettable. My sister Laura was there too. Laura is 4 years older than me, 65, and she spent her entire life resenting me for reasons I've never fully understood. When we were kids, she was jealous that I got better grades. When we were adults, she was bitter that I married Thomas while she went through 2 divorces. After Thomas died, I thought maybe Laura and I would get closer. Instead, she got meaner. At the engagement party, Laura pulled me aside and said, "Grace is beautiful, isn't she? Daniel really traded up. You must be so relieved he found someone like her." I didn't understand what she meant by traded up until later. Traded up from what? From me? The wedding was set for late October 2024. Grace wanted a fall wedding at some vineyard outside Austin. The venue alone cost $18,000. The flowers were $6,000. The photographer was $4,500. The videographer was another $3,800. Daniel asked if I could help out with some of the costs. I said yes. I gave them $40,000. It left me with $65,000 in savings. At 61 years old, that's all I had left of a lifetime of work, of my parents' house, of everything Thomas and I built together. But Daniel was my son. This was his wedding. I wanted him to be happy. Grace barely thanked me. She sent a text message. "Got the check. Thanks, Rebecca." Not, "Thank you so much," or "We really appreciate this," or even, "Thank you, Mom." Just, "Thanks, Rebecca." Like I was a distant aunt who'd sent a $50 gift card. In June, 4 months before the wedding, Daniel called me. His voice sounded strange, tight. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." My heart sank. I knew that tone. It was the same tone he'd used when he called about the $185,000. "I sold Dad's watch," he said. There was a long silence. I needed the money for the wedding. Grace wanted a band, and the one she liked costs $8,000. The watch got $18,000 at auction. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know you wanted to keep it, but I needed the cash." Thomas's gold watch. His father had given it to him on his 30th birthday. Thomas wore it every single day for 28 years. It was on his wrist when he died. After the funeral, I'd kept it in a velvet box in my dresser drawer. Sometimes I'd take it out and hold it, just to feel close to him again. I'd given it to Daniel a year after Thomas died, telling him, "Your father wanted you to have this someday. Take care of it." He sold it for a wedding band. For Grace. For a girl who couldn't even call me Mom. I didn't cry on the phone. I said, "Okay, Daniel, I understand." But after I hung up, I sat on my bed and sobbed for an hour. It felt like losing Thomas all over again. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for October 18th, a Friday night, at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. The wedding was the next day. I'd bought a navy blue dress for the dinner, something simple but elegant. I'd had my hair done that morning at the salon, the first time in 6 months. I arrived at the restaurant at 6:45 p.m. The reservation was for 7 tau. I wanted to be early, to help if anything was needed. When I walked in, Grace was standing near the entrance with her mother Jessica and my sister Laura. All 3 of them were laughing about something. They stopped when they saw me. Grace looked me up and down. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Rebecca, you're early." She said it like an accusation. "We're still setting up." I offered to help. Grace shook her head. "No, that's okay. We've got it handled." Jessica put her hand on Grace's shoulder, a protective gesture like I was some kind of threat. Laura said, "Becca, your dress is very practical." She said practical the way you'd say ugly. Grace and Jessica both smirked. I felt my face get hot. I excused myself to the bathroom. When I came back out 10 minutes later, The restaurant was filling up with guests. Daniel was there now, talking to his groomsmen. He saw me and waved, but he didn't come over. At 7:15, Grace called everyone to attention. She stood at the head of the table with a microphone the restaurant had provided. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight to celebrate with me and Daniel. Tomorrow is going to be the most important day of our lives, and we're so grateful to have you all here to share it with us." She thanked her parents. She thanked the bridesmaids. She thanked the groomsmen. She thanked the wedding planner, the florist, even the restaurant staff. She did not thank me, not once. $40,000, and she didn't say my name. After her speech, Grace walked over to where I was sitting. She leaned down close to my ear. Her perfume was overpowering, sickly sweet. "Rebecca, I need to talk to you." She didn't ask. She told me. We stepped into a quiet corner near the bar. Grace crossed her arms. "Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Tomorrow is my day, mine and Daniel's, and I need you to understand something." She paused. Her voice dropped lower. "You can come to the wedding if you promise not to speak. No toasts, no speeches, no advice. Just sit quietly and watch. Can you do that?" I stared at her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're telling me I can't speak at my own son's wedding? It's not your son's wedding, Rebecca. It's our wedding. And frankly, you tend to make things about yourself. I don't want any drama tomorrow. So yes, I'm asking you, actually, I'm telling you to stay silent. If you can't do that, then maybe it's better if you don't come at all." I felt like I'd been slapped. My hands were shaking. I looked past Grace to where Daniel was standing with his friends, laughing at something, completely oblivious. "Does Daniel know you're saying this to me?" Grace smiled. It was a cold, satisfied smile. "Daniel knows I'm handling family logistics. He trusts me." She patted my arm like I was a child. "So what's it going to be, Rebecca? Can you behave tomorrow? Or should I tell Daniel you're not feeling well?" I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too hot. Everyone was laughing and drinking wine and celebrating, and I was standing in a corner being told to shut up or stay home. "I'll think about it," I managed to say. Grace's smile disappeared. "Don't think too long. I need an answer by tonight." She walked away, back to her mother and my sister, who were watching from across the room. Jessica raised her wine glass to me in a mock toast. Laura smirked. I left the restaurant at 7:45 p.m. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I walked to my car in the parking garage, got in, and sat there in the dark for 20 minutes. Then I drove home. I didn't go to the rehearsal dinner. I didn't stay to watch my son celebrate the night before his wedding. When I got home, I took off my navy blue dress and hung it in the closet. I washed my face. I made a cup of tea. I sat in my living room in the dark, listening to the clock tick on the wall. The same clock that had been ticking the day Thomas died. The same clock that had been ticking when Daniel called asking for $185,000. The same clock that kept ticking no matter how much my life fell apart. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text message. From Laura. "You made the right choice, Becca. Some mothers know their place." I turned off my phone. I went to bed. I didn't sleep. At 6:23 a.m., someone knocked on my door. Hard, desperate knocking. I got up, put on my robe, and looked through the peephole. It was Daniel. He was still wearing his tuxedo from the rehearsal dinner, but it was wrinkled and stained. His tie was gone. His hair was a mess, and he was crying. I opened the door. Daniel stood there looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His eyes were red and swollen. There was a wine stain on his white dress shirt. He smelled like alcohol and desperation. "Mom!" His voice cracked. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked past me into the living room and collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. I sat down in the armchair across from him and waited. The clock ticked. 5 seconds. 10. 20. "The wedding's off," he finally said. "Grace called it off at 2 a.m. I should have felt relieved, maybe even vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. "What happened?" Daniel looked up at me. His face was a mess of tears and snot. "She found out you left the rehearsal dinner, Someone told her you weren't coming to the wedding. She went crazy, Mom. She said you were disrespecting her, that you were trying to ruin her special day. She said if my own mother wouldn't show up, it meant I didn't really love her. Did you tell her why I left? My voice came out colder than I intended. I didn't know why you left. You just disappeared. He wiped his face with his sleeve. Grace said you've always been jealous of her, that you never accepted our relationship. She said Laura warned her this would happen, that you'd find a way to make everything about yourself. There it was. Laura, my own sister. And you believed her? Daniel stood up and started pacing. I don't know what to believe anymore. Grace was screaming at me in front of everyone. Her mother was crying. The bridesmaids were all staring at me like I was some kind of monster. Then Grace threw her ring at me and locked herself in the bridal suite. Her dad told me to leave, so I drove around all night trying to figure out what the hell happened. I watched him pace back and forth across my living room carpet, the same carpet where he'd taken his first steps as a baby, where Thomas had taught him to tie his shoes, where we'd celebrated every Christmas for 37 years. Daniel, sit down. I need to tell you something. He stopped pacing but didn't sit. What? Grace told me last night that I could come to the wedding if I promised not to speak. No toast. No speech. Nothing. She said if I couldn't stay silent, I shouldn't come at all. Daniel's face went pale. That's not. She wouldn't. She did. Ask her yourself. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I needed coffee. I needed something to do with my hands. And your Aunt Laura sent me a text message at midnight, telling me I'd made the right choice by knowing my place. I heard Daniel sink back onto the couch. When I returned with my coffee, he was staring at the floor. I didn't know, Mom. I swear, I didn't know. Didn't know, or didn't want to know. I sat back down. Daniel, when was the last time you stood up for me? When was the last time you told Grace no? When was the last time you remembered that I sold my parents' house to save you? That's not fair, isn't it? I took a sip of coffee. It was too hot and burned my tongue. I gave you $185,000 5 years ago. You promised to pay me back. I haven't seen a dollar. I gave you $40,000 for this wedding. Grace didn't even mention my name in her speech last night. You sold your father's watch, the one thing I asked you to keep, to pay for a band Grace wanted. When exactly were you planning to think about what's fair to me? Daniel's face crumpled. I know I've been a terrible son. But Grace said the watch was just sitting in a drawer. She said Dad would have wanted me to use it for something important. I thought she was right. Your father wore that watch every day for 28 years. It was on his wrist when he died. And you sold it for a wedding band for a girl who just called off your wedding at 2 a.m. because my presence embarrassed her. The words hung in the air between us. Daniel started crying again, big gasping sobs that shook his shoulders. Part of me wanted to go to him, to hold him like I did when he was little and scraped his knee. But another part of me, a part that had been growing since last night, stayed right where I was. Mom, I don't know what to do. I love her. I love Grace. But everything's falling apart. Do you love her, or do you love the idea of her? I set down my coffee cup. Daniel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Did you sign anything making Jessica the beneficiary of your life insurance? The color drained from his face. That was all the answer I needed. How did you know about that? My stomach dropped. So you did. Grace said it was standard. She said it would show her family that I was committed, that I trusted them. His words came out in a rush. It's $500,000. The policy is through my firm. I changed it from you to Jessica last year. Grace said once we were married, we'd change it to her. But in the meantime, it should go to her mother because her family has been so supportive. I felt like I was going to be sick. And Laura signed as a witness? Daniel nodded. How did you... Lucky guess. I stood up. My legs felt shaky. Daniel, did it ever occur to you that making your future mother-in-law the beneficiary of $500,000 was insane? Did you ever wonder why Grace's family needed that kind of security before you were even married? I thought it was romantic. A gesture. It's not romantic, Daniel. It's a liability. I walked to the window. The sun was coming up now, pink and orange streaks across the sky. Another day. Another disaster. What else don't I know? What else did you sign? Nothing, I swear. I turned to look at him. Don't lie to me, not now. He hesitated. Then, Grace wanted me to put her name on the deed to this house. She said after we got married, you'd probably want to move into a retirement community anyway, and it would be easier if the house was already in our names. She said it was just planning ahead. This house? I looked around my living room. The house Thomas and I bought in 1991. The house where I'd raised Daniel. The house that was the only thing I had left. And did you? I made an appointment with a lawyer for next month, but I didn't sign anything yet. Get out. Mom, get out of my house, Daniel. My voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded like something cold and ancient and done. Go back to Grace. Go back to Laura. Go back to Jessica. Go wherever you want. But get out. Please, Mom, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You were going to take my house, my home, the last thing your father and I built together, and you were going to give it to a girl who won't even let me speak at your wedding. I opened the front door. Leave. Now. Daniel stood up slowly. He looked like a stranger. I didn't mean to hurt you. Yes, you did. You just didn't think I'd find out. I held the door open. When you figure out who you are without Grace telling you, you know where to find me. Until then, I don't want to see you. He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. I'm sorry. I know you are. That's what makes it worse. I closed the door behind him. Through the window, I watched him get into his car and drive away. Then I locked the door, closed the curtains, and went back to the kitchen. My phone was on the counter. I picked it up and stared at it for a long time. Then I made a call I should have made 5 years ago. Yes, I need a lawyer. The lawyer's name was Martin Pierce. He was 54, efficient, and didn't waste time on sympathy. I like that. When I met him at his office that afternoon, I brought everything. Bank statements, copies of the wire transfer from 2019, the text message from Laura, a printed screenshot of Grace's Instagram showing her eating pizza after she'd claimed to be gluten-free at my dinner table. Mrs. Norton, I'm going to be blunt with you. Martin sat across from me in his leather chair. Your son is an adult. The money you gave him 5 years ago, if there was no written loan agreement, legally counts as a gift. You can't force repayment. I know that. But the life insurance is also legal, as long as he made the change voluntarily. The question is whether there was coercion or undue influence. He flipped through the papers I'd given him. You said Grace's mother is facing financial difficulties? Daniel mentioned her business was struggling. I don't have proof. Let me look into it. Martin made a note. As for the house, the good news is he hasn't signed anything yet. I'll draft a letter making it clear that any attempt to change the deed without your explicit written consent will be met with legal action. That should scare them off. What about the $40,000 I gave them for the wedding? Martin shook his head. Wedding gifts are tricky. Since the wedding was called off, you might have a case for return of funds, but it depends on what's already been spent. Venue deposits, catering, flowers, most of those are non-refundable. I felt my chest tighten. So they keep my money even though there's no wedding? Possibly, unless you can prove fraud or misrepresentation. He looked at me over his glasses. Mrs. Norton, I have to ask, what's your goal here? Are you trying to get your money back, or are you trying to protect yourself going forward? I thought about that. About Daniel crying on my couch this morning, about the watch, about Thomas. Both. Then here's what I recommend. First, I'll run a financial background check on Jessica Sullivan and Grace Sullivan. If they're in debt or facing legal issues, that's leverage. Second, I'll draft a cease and desist letter regarding any future attempts to access your assets. Third, we need to update your will immediately to make sure Daniel isn't listed as executor or primary beneficiary. Not to punish him, but to protect you. He's my only child. I understand. But if he's being manipulated by people who see you as a bank account, we need safeguards. Martin's voice softened slightly. You can always change it back later once the situation stabilizes. But right now, you're vulnerable. I signed the papers. All of them. When I left Martin's office at 4:30 p.m., the sun was already low in the sky. Today was supposed to be Daniel's wedding day. Right now, at this very moment, he should have been standing at the altar. I should have been sitting in the front row wearing my navy blue dress, watching my son get married. Instead, I was alone. I drove home and parked in the driveway. The house looked exactly the same as it had this morning, but everything felt different. I unlocked the door and went inside. The silence was suffocating. I made tea. I didn't drink it. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall. At 6 p.m., I went to Daniel's old bedroom. I'd kept it mostly the same after he moved out. His high school track trophies were still on the shelf. His old posters were still on the walls. I opened the closet and found a box of his things he'd left behind over the years. Old letters, photos, report cards. At the bottom of the box, I found an envelope. It was yellowed with age, the handwriting on the front in Thomas's careful script, "For Rebecca. Open when you need to remember." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter dated June 2018, a month before Thomas died. "My dearest Rebecca, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I've been having chest pains lately, and I'm too stubborn to see a doctor, so I figure I should write down a few things while I can. First, I love you. I've loved you since the day I met you in that coffee shop in 1983. You were reading a book and drinking terrible coffee, and I knew right then I'd marry you. Second, about Laura. I know you've always tried to maintain a relationship with her because she's your sister, but Becca, she's jealous of you. She always has been. She resents that you're happy, that we built a good life. Be careful with her. Don't let her close enough to hurt you. Third, about Daniel. He's a good kid, but he's weak when it comes to people using him. Watch out for that. He'll trust the wrong people because he wants to be liked. You'll have to be strong enough for both of you. I wish I could be there to protect you from all this. But if I'm gone, promise me you'll protect yourself. Don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness. Not Laura, not strangers, not even Daniel if he forgets who you are. You're stronger than you think, Becca. Remember that. All my love, Thomas." I read the letter 3 times, then I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket, close to my heart. Thomas had known. He'd seen what I'd been too blind to see. I went back downstairs and opened my laptop. I logged into my bank account and looked at the numbers. $65,000 left. At 61 years old, that was my entire safety net. My retirement, my emergency fund, my future. Then I opened my email and found the receipt from the jeweler who'd bought Thomas's watch at auction. Daniel had forwarded it to me months ago, for my records. I'd never looked at it closely. The sale was handled by an auction house in Houston. The watch sold for $18,000, but the buyer's premium and seller's fees totaled $3,200. Daniel had only netted $14,800. He'd told me he got $18,000 for the wedding band. He'd lied about that too. He'd probably kept the difference. I closed the laptop and walked to the living room window. Outside, the street was quiet. Families were having dinner. Children were playing in yards. The world kept turning like nothing had happened. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Norton? This is Martin Pierce. I'm sorry to call on a Saturday evening, but I found something you need to know about." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "Jessica Sullivan is under investigation by the IRS for tax evasion. She owes approximately $120,000 in back taxes and penalties. Her business has been operating at a loss for 3 years. She's facing potential criminal charges if she doesn't settle by the end of the year." I sat down slowly. "And Grace?" "Grace Sullivan has 3 active lawsuits against her from former business associates. All 3 involve accusations of defamation and fraud. She's being sued for a combined total of $85,000. From what I can tell, she's been burning through Daniel's money trying to maintain her lifestyle while fighting these cases. Does Daniel know?" "I doubt it." Martin's voice was grim. "Mrs. Norton, these women aren't just bad for your son. They're desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things. That life insurance policy with Jessica as the beneficiary? That's not romantic. That's a motive." The room tilted. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to talk to your son, tonight, and you need to tell him to change that beneficiary back immediately, because if something were to happen to him, Jessica would collect $500,000. And given her financial situation, that's a very tempting solution to her problems. After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. The clock ticked. The house settled. Somewhere in Austin, Daniel was probably with Grace, trying to figure out how to fix their broken engagement, and he had no idea he was worth more to them dead than alive. I picked up my phone and called him. It went straight to voicemail. I didn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m., I was still sitting at my kitchen table with Thomas's letter in front of me and my laptop open. I'd been reading everything I could find about Grace Sullivan online. Her Instagram was a masterpiece of fakery. Photos in restaurants she couldn't afford, designer bags that were probably knockoffs, sponsored posts for products that didn't exist anymore. But it was the comments that told the real story. Scattered among the heart emojis and gorgeous messages were others. You still owe me $2,000. Stop blocking my calls. Everyone should know you're a fraud. Grace deleted them quickly, but the internet remembers everything. I took screenshots of all of them. At 7 a.m. Sunday morning, I called Martin Pierce's emergency line. I need to stop payment on a check. The $40,000 wedding gift? Yes, can I do that? If it hasn't been cashed yet, absolutely. Call your bank the second they open tomorrow morning. There'll be a fee, usually $30 or so, but it'll freeze the funds. I felt something unfamiliar rising in my chest. It took me a moment to recognize it. Control. For the first time in 5 years, I was making a decision that protected me instead of enabling Daniel. There's something else, Martin said. I did more digging on Grace Sullivan. She's not just being sued. She's also being investigated for insurance fraud. Small claims, nothing criminal yet, but it's a pattern. Fender benders where she claims injuries that doctors can't verify. Falls in parking lots. That kind of thing. She's a con artist. That's my assessment, yes. And your son is her current mark. He paused. Mrs. Norton, I'm going to suggest something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Would you be willing to hire a private investigator to document Grace and Jessica's activities? It's not cheap, but if they're planning something involving Daniel, we need evidence. How much? $150 an hour plus expenses. Figure $3,000 for a week of surveillance. I thought about my $65,000, about my retirement disappearing piece by piece, about Daniel worth $500,000 dead. Do it. By Monday afternoon, the investigator, a former police detective named Sarah Chen, had already sent her first report. Grace and Jessica had met for lunch at an expensive steakhouse Sunday afternoon. The investigator had sat 2 tables away and recorded their conversation on her phone. I listened to the audio file through my earbuds, my hands shaking. Grace's voice, sharp and angry. I don't care if she's his mother. Rebecca is a problem. She turned Daniel against me. Jessica's voice, calmer but calculating. The wedding has to happen, Grace. We need that money. My IRS payment is due in 6 weeks. If I don't pay, I'm going to prison. So what do? We get Daniel back. You apologize. Blame everything on wedding stress. Tell him you overreacted. Reschedule the wedding for next month, something small and quick. Once you're married, the life insurance automatically transfers to you as the spouse. Then we don't need the policy with me on it anymore. And what about Rebecca? A pause. Then Jessica's voice, cold as ice. Once you and Daniel are married, she doesn't matter. We'll deal with her later. I stopped the recording. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. Deal with her later. They were talking about me like I was an obstacle to remove. I forwarded the audio to Martin immediately. Then I made another call. Daniel Norton's office. How may I help you? Yes, I need to speak with Peter Reyes, please. Tell him it's regarding Grace Sullivan. Peter was Daniel's business partner at the architecture firm. They'd started it together 6 years ago. I'd met him at several company dinners. He was a good man, cautious and thorough. The kind of person who read contracts twice before signing. Mrs. Norton, is everything okay? Peter, I need to tell you something, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but I need you to listen. I took a deep breath. Grace Sullivan is planning to sue your firm for sexual harassment. It's not real. It's a shakedown. She's done it before to other companies. I have documentation. Silence. Then, how do you know this? I hired an investigator. Grace is being sued by 3 other businesses for fraud and defamation. She has a pattern of making false claims to get settlement money. She's desperate right now because she's losing those cases. Your firm is her next target." Jesus Christ. Peter's voice dropped to a whisper. "She was here Friday morning asking questions about our liability insurance. She wanted to know our coverage limits. I thought she was just being nosy because of the wedding planning. She was researching how much she could get from you. I sent him the files Sarah had compiled. Check your email. I'm sending you everything. Court documents, depositions from her other victims, bank records showing she's broke. She needs cash fast. And she's going to claim Daniel's business partner harassed her at company events. Why would she claim it was me and not Daniel? Because she needs Daniel to believe her and take her side. If she accused him, the con falls apart. But if she accuses you, Daniel has to choose between his business partner and his fiancée. And she's betting he'll choose her." I heard Peter typing. "I'm looking at the files now. Oh my God, there are 5 different lawsuits here. 5 companies she's gone after." His voice turned hard. "Does Daniel know?" "No. And if you tell him, he won't believe you. He'll think we're all conspiring against her. You need to protect the firm first. Get ahead of this. Document everything. If she shows up making claims, you'll have proof she's a serial filer. Mrs. Norton, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just protect yourself. And watch out for my son. He's in over his head." After I hung up, I sat back and let out a long breath. The check was stopped. The business partner was warned. The investigator was watching. For the first time since Friday night, I felt like I wasn't just reacting. I was fighting back. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Mom, can we talk? Grace wants to apologize to you. She wants to start over. We're thinking of rescheduling the wedding for next month. Small ceremony. Just family. Will you please come?" I stared at the message for a long time. Next month. Rushed wedding. Just like Jessica had said on the recording. They were moving forward with the plan. I typed back, "We'll talk soon. I love you." But I didn't mean soon. I meant after I'd finished what I'd started. That night, Sarah sent another update. Grace had visited 3 different law firms Monday afternoon, asking about workplace harassment cases. She was shopping for a lawyer willing to take her case. 2 firms had turned her down after running basic background checks. The 3rd was still considering it. I forwarded everything to Peter. Then I opened my laptop and started composing an email. Not to Daniel. Not to Grace. To someone who deserved to know the truth about what was happening. "Dear Laura," I typed, "we need to talk about what you've done. Tuesday morning, 6:47 a.m. The pounding on my door was so violent I thought someone was trying to break it down. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, and looked through the peephole. Daniel. Again. But this time his face wasn't sad. It was furious. I opened the door. He pushed past me into the house. "What the hell did you do?" "Good morning to you too." "Don't." He spun around to face me. His eyes were wild. "Peter called me at midnight. He said you sent him files about Grace. That you told him she was planning to sue the firm. That you hired a private investigator. Mom, what the hell is wrong with you?" I closed the door calmly and walked to the kitchen. "Would you like coffee?" "I don't want coffee. I want to know why you're trying to destroy my life." I poured myself a cup. My hands were steady. "I'm not destroying your life, Daniel. I'm trying to save it. By lying about Grace? By turning my business partner against me? Peter wants me to buy him out now. He says he can't work with me if I'm going to marry someone who might sue the company. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've done exactly what needed to be done." I sat down at the table. "Sit down. I need to show you something." "I'm not sitting down. I'm not—" "Daniel, sit down." Something in my voice made him stop. He sat. I opened my laptop and pulled up Sarah's reports. "I hired an investigator because Grace's mother is under IRS investigation for $120,000 in unpaid taxes. Because Grace is being sued by 3 different companies for fraud. Because you changed your life insurance to make Jessica the beneficiary of $500,000. And desperate people do desperate things." Daniel's face went pale. "How do you know about the insurance? How do you think? You signed legal documents with Laura as a witness. Did you really believe that would stay secret?" I turned the laptop toward him. But that's not the worst part. Listen to this. I played the recording from Sunday, Grace and Jessica at the steakhouse. The whole conversation. Daniel's face went from pale to gray to green. When Jessica's voice said, "Once you're married, she doesn't matter," he stood up and walked to the sink like he was going to be sick. "That's not real. You faked that. Call Peter. Ask him what happened yesterday when Grace showed up at the office." I took a sip of coffee. She tried to schedule a meeting with him alone. She was wearing a low-cut blouse and perfume. She had papers with her about workplace culture concerns. Peter recorded the whole thing and had a witness present. When she realized he was prepared, she left. Then her lawyer called an hour later threatening harassment claims. Peter sent them Grace's history of frivolous lawsuits. They dropped her as a client immediately. Daniel sank back into the chair. No, Grace wouldn't. Grace would. Grace did. And she was planning to make you choose between her and Peter. She was betting you'd side with her, force Peter out, and then she'd own half your business through the marriage. I pulled out another file. There's more. Sarah followed Grace yesterday afternoon. Want to know where she went? He didn't answer. I told him anyway. She went to a sporting goods store. She spent 40 minutes looking at climbing equipment, harnesses, ropes, carabiners. Then she went to a hiking supply shop and bought maps of McKinney Falls State Park, the cliffs section specifically. So what? She likes hiking. Does she? I pulled out my phone and showed him Grace's Instagram. According to her social media, she's never hiked in her life. She complains about walking more than a mile. But suddenly, days after your wedding falls apart, she's researching climbing gear and cliff maps. I pulled out the final document, printed messages Sarah had recovered from Grace's cloud backup. I'd paid extra for that service. Worth every penny. These are text messages between Grace and her mother from 2 weeks ago. Read them. Daniel picked up the papers. I watched his face as he read, watched the color drain completely away. Grace. He loves rock climbing. I found a good spot. Accidents happen all the time. Jessica. Too risky. What if it doesn't work? Grace. Then we go to plan B. But this is cleaner. Insurance pays out for accidents. $500K solves everything. Jessica. And the mother? Grace. After we're married, she doesn't matter. Old people have accidents too. The papers slipped from Daniel's hands onto the table. He stared at them like they were written in a foreign language. This isn't possible. It's not only possible, it's documented. Grace wasn't planning a marriage, Daniel. She was planning a murder, and then she was planning mine. I need to talk to her. There has to be an explanation. There's no explanation, there's evidence, there's motive, there's opportunity. And there's your life insurance policy with her mother as the beneficiary. I leaned forward. Daniel, they were going to kill you. Grace was going to be the grieving widow. Jessica was going to collect $500,000. And I was going to be the next accident so they could take this house. The doorbell rang. We both froze. I got up and looked through the peephole. Jessica and Grace, and a man in a suit I didn't recognize. Don't answer it, Daniel whispered. Oh, I'm going to answer it. I opened the door. Good morning, Jessica. Grace, and you are? The man held out a card. Richard Blanco, attorney at law. I represent Ms. Sullivan and Ms. Sullivan. We're here to discuss your harassment of my clients and the defamatory statements you've been making. Come in, please. I've been expecting you. I stepped aside. They filed in like they owned the place. Grace's eyes were red. Jessica looked like she hadn't slept. They both stopped when they saw Daniel sitting at my kitchen table. Baby, Grace rushed toward him. Thank God you're here. Your mother has been stalking us, hiring people to follow us, making up horrible lies. Stop talking. Daniel's voice was flat, dead. Just stop. Grace froze. What? Daniel picked up the printed messages and held them up. Explain these. Grace's face went white. She looked at her mother. Jessica looked at the lawyer. The lawyer looked at the messages. Where did you get those? Those are private communications. Obtaining them is illegal. They were obtained from a cloud backup that Grace's public Instagram account is connected to. Perfectly legal. I smiled at the lawyer. As is recording conversations in public places. As is documenting fraud patterns. as is warning potential victims of ongoing schemes. The lawyer's expression changed. He looked at Grace. Are these messages real? I can explain. Yes or no. Are these real? Grace's face crumpled. She doesn't understand. We were joking. It was dark humor. We would never. Get out of my house. Daniel stood up. His voice shook. All of you, get out. Daniel, please. Grace reached for him. Don't touch me. He jerked away. You were going to kill me. You were going to murder me for insurance money. And then you were going to kill my mother. Jessica finally spoke. That's ridiculous. Those messages are taken out of context. The context, I said quietly, is that you owe the IRS $120,000, that Grace owes $85,000 in lawsuits, that you're both broke and desperate, and that my son's life was worth $500,000 to you. That's the context. The lawyer was already backing toward the door. I'm withdrawing from this case. Don't contact my office again. He left. Jessica and Grace stood there for another moment. Then Jessica grabbed her daughter's arm. We're leaving, and you'll be hearing from our attorneys. Real ones. I look forward to it, I said. I'll make sure to send them copies of everything, including the part where you plotted to murder your future son-in-law. After they left, Daniel and I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I'm sorry. I know. I should have listened to you. I should have seen. You saw what you wanted to see. What they wanted you to see. I reached across the table and took his hand. The question is, what are you going to see now? 3 months later. February 2025. The Travis County District Attorney couldn't charge Grace and Jessica with conspiracy to commit murder. The messages were ambiguous, they said. Dark humor taken out of context, the defense would argue. But insurance fraud? That was crystal clear. Attempting to be named beneficiary under false pretenses with intent to collect through manufactured accidents? That was prosecutable. Grace and Jessica both faced charges. Trial was set for June. Their lawyer, their third one, told them to expect plea deals. 2 years, maybe 3 if they cooperated. Jessica would lose her business license. Grace would have a felony record. Her Instagram account, once 47,000 followers strong, was deleted after the arrest made local news. Turns out people don't want to follow admitted fraudsters. The IRS moved faster than the criminal courts. Jessica's assets were seized in December. Her condo, her leased Mercedes, her business equipment. Everything went to pay the $120,000 debt. She was living with her sister now in a 1-bedroom apartment in San Marcos, working at a Target to make ends meet. I should have felt satisfaction. Maybe I did, a little. Mostly, I just felt tired. Laura, my sister. I'd finally sent that email in November. It was short. You witnessed Daniel signing over his life insurance to strangers who planned to kill him for money. You helped them. You sided with them over me, your own sister, because you've hated me your entire life. I don't know why, and I don't care anymore. You're out of my will. You're out of my life. Don't contact me again. She'd responded with a 3-page email full of justifications. She'd thought she was helping Daniel grow up. She'd believed Grace was good for him. She hadn't known about the financial problems. She was sorry I was upset, but I was overreacting as usual. I never wrote back. Martin helped me update my will. Laura's name was removed from everything. The house, the money, the few pieces of jewelry that had been our mother's. Everything would go to Daniel now, but with conditions. He couldn't access it until he was 45. Couldn't use it to pay debts. Couldn't transfer it to anyone else. If he died before me, it would all go to a charity for elderly abuse victims. You don't trust him, Martin had observed when I explained what I wanted. I love him, I'd corrected. That's different from trust. Trust has to be earned back. Daniel was living in my guest bedroom, had been since November. He'd moved out of his apartment, the one I'd helped him get 6 years ago, and asked if he could come home for a while. How long is a while? I'd asked. Until I figure out who I am without someone telling me. He was in therapy twice a week. Dr. Patricia Moss, a psychologist who specialized in family manipulation and financial abuse. Daniel paid for it himself, $180 per session, and he never missed an appointment. He'd also started paying me back. Not the full $185,000, Not yet. But $500 a month, every month, automatically transferred on the first. It would take him 30 years at that rate, but it was something. It was a start. Peter had agreed to keep the business partnership going, but the dynamic had changed. Daniel was no longer the charismatic frontman. He was quieter now, more careful. He'd stopped making promises he couldn't keep. The firm was doing well. They'd landed 2 major contracts in January alone. As for me, I took $60,000 of my remaining savings and did something I should have done years ago. I opened the Rebecca Norton Center for Elder Justice. It was a small office downtown, staffed by volunteers, offering free legal consultations for seniors facing financial abuse from family members. Martin donated 10 hours a week. Sarah Chen, the investigator, taught classes on recognizing manipulation tactics. We'd helped 23 families in our first 2 months. The local news did a story on us in January. Retired teacher turns personal tragedy into mission to help others. They interviewed me in front of the center, and I told them everything about Daniel, about Grace, about the life insurance, about how I'd almost lost my son to people who saw him as nothing more than a payout. Daniel watched the interview from the guest bedroom. When I got home, he was crying. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for everything." "I know you are." I sat down next to him on the bed. But sorry isn't enough. Sorry is just words. I need to see change. Real, lasting change. And that takes time. How much time? I don't know. Maybe years. Maybe forever. I touched his face. "You're my son, and I love you. But you almost got yourself killed because you stopped thinking for yourself. You let Grace and her mother erase me from your life like I was nothing. Like 37 years of raising you, sacrificing for you, loving you, meant less than a pretty girl's attention. I know. Do you? Because knowing it in your head and feeling it in your heart are different things." I stood up. "You're welcome to stay here as long as you need to, but you need to understand something. You're not staying here as my child. You're staying here as an adult who made terrible choices and is now facing the consequences. That means respecting my space, contributing to household expenses, and proving through your actions that you understand what you did wrong. I'll do whatever it takes. We'll see." That was 3 months ago. Since then, Daniel had kept his word. He paid rent, $800 a month. He bought groceries. He cooked dinner twice a week. He went to therapy. He paid the $500 toward his debt. He didn't ask me for anything. Last week, he came to me with something I wasn't expecting, a check for $18,000. "What's this?" "I found Dad's watch. I lied about selling it. I kept it because I felt guilty. I wanted to sell it, but I couldn't go through with it. It's been in my safe deposit box this whole time." He looked at the floor. "I lied to you because I'd already spent the money Grace wanted for the band. I borrowed it from a credit card. I thought if you believed the watch was gone, you'd never ask about it, and I could hide what I'd done." I stared at the check, then at him. "You've had it this whole time?" "Yes, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I wanted you to know the truth. I want to keep it if that's okay. But I wanted to pay you back the amount I said I got for it, with interest. That's why it's $18,000 instead of $14,800. I didn't know what to say. I took the check. "Thank you. Can I ask you something?" He looked at me finally. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I thought about that, about Thomas's letter, about the watch that wasn't really gone, about the $500 payments, about the therapy sessions, about the man sitting in front of me who looked like my son but was slowly becoming someone I didn't quite recognize yet. Someone quieter, someone more careful, someone maybe better. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Ask me again in a year." His face fell, but he nodded. "That's fair." That night, after Daniel went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with Thomas's letter and the check for $18,000. I thought about everything that had happened, about Grace and Jessica waiting for trial, about Laura, cut out of my life like the cancer she'd always been, about Daniel in the guest bedroom, trying to become someone worthy of forgiveness. I got up and walked to the guest bedroom door. I could hear Daniel breathing on the other side. I stood there for a long moment. Then I went to the kitchen drawer and found the spare house key, the one I'd had made years ago. I walked back to the guest bedroom and set it on the floor in front of the door, quiet enough that he wouldn't hear. I didn't open the door. I didn't say anything. I just left the key there, in the space between us, and went to bed. The next morning, the key was gone. Daniel was making coffee when I came downstairs. He didn't say anything about it. Neither did I. But it was there now in his pocket. A piece of metal that meant, maybe. That meant, prove it. That meant, I'm not giving up on you yet. But I'm not pretending everything is fine either. He handed me a cup of coffee. I took it. We stood there in my kitchen, in the house Thomas and I had built, in the life I'd almost lost. And we didn't say anything at all. Sometimes silence isn't empty. Sometimes it's full of all the things that can't be spoken yet. All the things that have to be earned back, piece by piece, day by day, choice by choice. I took a sip of coffee. Daniel did the same. Outside, the sun was rising on another day, another chance, another moment to decide what comes next. The clock ticked on the wall, and for the first time in months, I didn't hate the sound. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? What would you have done in Rebecca's situation? And if you have your own story of family betrayal and finding your strength again, I'd love to hear it. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is speak our truth.